Some scandals don't explode, they get erased. No leaks, no headlines, no wreckage left behind, just gone. And when a story vanishes that cleanly, it only means one thing. It mattered so much that someone powerful made sure it never existed. This is that story, the one you were never supposed to hear, the one buried under silence, money, and perfectly managed narratives. And tonight, we're tearing straight through the polish to the chapter that refuses to stay dead.
Trevor said to Bethany Frankel about how Meghan was going to...
Said his ex was a woman from a show called Suits. I didn't know what the show was. I didn't know the woman. Months later...
Meghan Markle is petrified her ex-husband Trevor Engelson will pen an explosive.
Let's rewind way back, before the titles, before the palace gates, before the fairy tale branding kicked in. Before Meghan Markle became a global symbol, she was something else entirely. And the most unsettling part? Someone was right there beside her, watching everything unfold and never said a word. For 10 long years, Trevor Engelson stayed silent. No interviews, no tell-all, no his side of the story. And that silence, that's where the real noise begins. Toronto wasn't just a chapter in Meghan's life, it was a laboratory, a private playground for the elite. This wasn't Hollywood chaos with paparazzi and clout chasers. Toronto's upper-tier social scene was quieter, richer, colder, old money, new power, everyone pretending not to notice everyone else while knowing everything. And sitting right at the center of it all was Soho House, not a club, a filter, a fortress, members only, no phones, no outsiders, no mistakes.
10 long years, Trevor Engelson, Meghan Markle's ex-husband, said nothing. No interviews.
Discretion wasn't optional there, it was currency. And inside those walls, reputation wasn't built on fame. It was built on usefulness, on who could make things happen quietly, on who could ensure comfort, pleasure, secrecy, and absolute silence afterward. Here's where the whispers start to sharpen. Meghan wasn't drifting through Soho House as a guest. She wasn't just networking. She wasn't wide-eyed or new. Insiders describe her as something far more calculated, embedded, central. Essential. The word that keeps surfacing, the one people hesitate before saying out loud, is supplier. Not staff, not star, supplier. The person who didn't attend the party, she made the party work. Think about that. In rooms where reputations are fragile and secrets are lethal, the person who controls the flow controls everything. And Meghan knew exactly how to position herself. She could read a room instantly, shift personalities on command, become whatever version was needed, charming, discreet, indispensable. There are murmurs about phones, photos, requests made quietly after the fact, not only being there, but making sure nothing stayed behind. That's not influence, that's leverage.
Meghan ever met Prince Harry, she created a vision board mapping the future she wanted. And right in the center of it...
And while all of this was happening, the connections, the favors, the quiet power plays, one man was watching from closer than anyone else ever would. The man who would later be erased from her story like a typo. But before we get to why his silence matters so much, we need to go back even further. Because Toronto wasn't where this began, it was where she perfected it. Before Soho House, before elite Canadian circles, before the Prince, there was Jamaica, her wedding. People who attended don't talk about romance. They don't talk about vows or sunsets or love. They talk about logistics, control, precision. Everything mapped out before anyone even arrived, not just decor, the experience. Who would be where, how the night would unfold, who would feel what and when.
Said to Bethany Frankel about how Meghan was going to snare Harry.
Guests left unsettled, not because it wasn't beautiful, but because it felt orchestrated, like they'd stepped into a production, not a celebration. That level of control doesn't come from spontaneity. It comes from someone who understands environments as tools, someone who knows that if you control the setting, you control the memory. And this wasn't a one-off. People who knew her recognized the pattern instantly. Meghan didn't attend social spaces, she ran them, managed energy, managed people, managed outcomes. Behind smiles and charm, she was steering everything quietly, efficiently, invisibly. Trust followed, discretion followed. In worlds where reputation is everything, that kind of trust is never accidental. It's earned through consistency, silence, and results. By the time she arrived in Toronto, she wasn't learning, she was executing. Trevor saw this long before anyone else. Years later, the pieces snapped into place for him. The positioning, the indispensability, the ability to vanish problems before they became stories. Jamaica wasn't just a wedding, it was a preview. And then came the night that nearly shattered everything. Toronto, summer 2016. By then, Meghan wasn't just an actress. She was moving with serious money, serious connections, serious protection. And then Prince Harry entered the picture, not casually, not publicly, but in a controlled, curated private setting. A guest list chosen with surgical care, a location selected for discretion, a night designed to stay invisible. And then something went wrong, very wrong. Panic spread, confusion, the kind of tension you can feel in your chest. People scrambling not for comfort, but for containment. Because suddenly everyone in that room understood the same terrifying truth at the same time. This could not become a story. Not for her, not for him, not for anyone involved. By morning, it was gone. No whispers, no leaks, no aftermath, nothing. And that kind of disappearance doesn't happen unless something very serious almost surfaced. Toronto didn't move on. Toronto went dark. Phones stopped ringing. Staff went silent. Gossip networks, the same ones that never shut up, flatlined overnight. Connections vanished. People dropped off social media. Names stopped being mentioned. That wasn't forgetting, that was erasing. Within months, Meghan's entire Toronto life was sealed off, packaged, locked away. When her relationship went public, the world was handed a clean slate, a perfect narrative. No complicated past, no elite party networks, no Soho House whispers, just a humanitarian actress who met a prince. And everyone played along, because messy chapters don't sell fairy tales. And the man who knew all of it, the one person who could confirm what was real, stayed completely silent. Trevor Engelson didn't just date her. He lived inside her private world before it was guarded by armies of PR professionals, and when it ended cold. Rings mailed back. No conversation, no closure. Most people would talk. He didn't, and that silence is screaming. If silence could talk, Trevor Engelson's would be deafening. Years passed, then more years, and still nothing. No bitterness spilled into tabloids, no conveniently timed revelations, no anonymous sources close to the ex. Just a man who rebuilt his life quietly, remarried, had children, and never once reached back into the past that made him famous by association. That kind of restraint isn't weakness, it's calculation. And people who know him say the same thing in hushed tones. He understood exactly what he was up against. Because here's the part no one likes to confront. When someone walks away from a relationship carrying years of memories, patterns, and private truths and chooses total silence, it's rarely because there's nothing to say. It's because saying it would come at a cost. Strip away the palace lights, the press releases, the Instagram quotes about compassion and healing. Look only at the structure. The pattern repeats so cleanly it's almost clinical. Meghan enters a world. She studies it, maps it, identifies who holds access, who controls opportunity, who moves information without leaving fingerprints. She doesn't rush. She doesn't force. She integrates, becomes necessary, becomes the person things quietly pass through. And when the next level opens, she exits. And the previous chapter? Gone, not faded, removed. Hollywood connections vanish. Toronto circles go silent. Friendships end without drama, without explanation, without overlap into the next chapter. This isn't how normal relationships dissolve. This is how risk is managed. Now look at Prince Harry through that lens. Not the curated version, the real one insiders always whispered about. Impulsive, drawn to excess, restless under control. Someone whose entire life had been about containment, managing behavior, preventing damage. He wasn't sheltered. He was watched, corrected, redirected. Then Meghan enters his orbit and doesn't correct him. She doesn't flinch when nights run long. She doesn't warn him when lines blur. She doesn't pull him back toward safety. She matches him, normalizes what everyone else tried to suppress. And for someone like Harry, that isn't just attractive, it's intoxicating. Because people don't fall hardest for those who want to fix them. They fall for the ones who make them feel acceptable exactly as they are. While the world watched a romance unfold, someone else watched with recognition. Trevor had lived this before. He knew how powerful that feeling was, how quickly it rewires loyalty, how it makes everyone else fade into the background. And he knew something else too. Once that shift happens, there's no room left for witnesses from the past. That's why his silence matters more than any rumor. He didn't go public because public narratives crush nuance. He didn't speak because stories like this don't just embarrass people, they implicate systems. They expose how power actually moves, how discretion is enforced, how reputations are protected not by innocence but by infrastructure. Think back to Toronto 2016. The speed of that blackout, the completeness, the way an entire city's gossip network went dead overnight. That doesn't happen because nothing happened. It happens because too many important people realized something almost escaped containment. So it was sealed. And when the relationship went public, the slate was wiped clean. The past was simplified. The image was perfected. The fairy tale was locked in place. Here's the uncomfortable truth most audiences never want to hear. Scandals don't destroy people. Stories do. to. And the most effective strategy isn't fighting a damaging story, it's preventing it from ever existing, making sure the people who know the most stay the quietest. Soho House wasn't built to protect innocence, it was built to protect privacy, to guarantee that what happens inside stays inside. And when that culture of discretion follows someone from city to city, from circle to circle, it becomes a shield, a very effective one. Trevor didn't walk away with just heartbreak, he walked away with knowledge. Knowledge about how environments are controlled, how people are leveraged, how narratives are curated. And he made a choice: silence over spectacle, distance over destruction. And Harry, he didn't escape anything. He entered something already designed to understand him, already built to accommodate his impulses, not restrain them, already skilled at becoming indispensable. This wasn't luck, this wasn't chaos, this was methodical. And that's the part that refuses to sit comfortably. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. The erased chapters, the disappearing connections, the immaculate timelines. The way every transition looks clean only because everything messy was removed beforehand. Real life isn't that tidy. So ask yourself the only question that actually matters. Not whether every rumor is true, not whether every detail can be proven, but why so much effort went into keeping this buried? Why entire networks went silent? Why the story we were given feels so smooth when reality is usually jagged? Stories that get erased don't stay buried forever. They wait for circumstances to shift, for silence to become more dangerous than speech, for someone to decide the cost of talking is finally worth paying. And when that moment comes, when one voice breaks from the quiet, the narrative won't just crack. It will collapse. Crack. It will collapse. Crack. It will collapse. Crack.